Hello everyone, my name is Jake. Welcome back to Federal Focus, and I have to make this video. This is a urgent message for all people interested in elections, and that is that the polling industry has turned to complete trash, at least in the primaries. So, now, a couple days ago, I talked about Michigan. There was obviously a big primary there, and El Sayed, the progressive candidate, was looking like he was going to win by 20 points or 15 points as shown in the polls. However, there was around a 10 or 15 point miss, and he ended up only winning by around a point. And people thought he was going to win by 15 points, maybe even 20 at the start of the night. So this was a big deal. People were talking about this may just be a one-off thing with Michigan. Maybe they underestimated the rural votes. But today, or yesterday technically, in Wisconsin, alright, this is ridiculous. The polls showed Hong. I talked about this a couple days ago. I said I thought she may underestimate, she may actually not do as well as she was supposed to do, and I kind of called it. But I didn't call this. Alright, she was up by 25 points in this poll. 25 points in the averages. She ended up losing. She was up by 25 points. How is this possible? How are the polls doing this? Alright, this is ridiculous. I know Polymarket's horrible. Showed her with a 97% chance of winning, okay? I thought she was going to underestimate, at least by a couple points. I didn't expect her to lose the primary to the establishment David, who I honestly think that this gives the Democrats a better chance, but this would get some people on the left wing to just not vote for him. But this is absolute insanity, alright? The polling in this cycle has been so horrendously bad. And this is not the only example from yesterday. I'm going to show more, but this is the main one because this is ridiculous. Alright. She won Madison, which is where she lives, by only 7 points. It's a university town, for goodness sake, okay? Also, shout out to Milwaukee for taking 5 hours to call their votes, and they were at 80% for 5 hours. They lost 5 USB sticks, and they had to re-go to the place where they were, and they had to go back. I had to fall asleep. I wasn't gonna stay up for 3 hours. I was up till like 1:30, which is where I'm up at normal. It's so stupid. All right, Wisconsin, get your stuff together. Michigan, get everything together now. Wisconsin and Michigan, normally states where their polls are really bad, normally because they underestimate rural support, which is kind of what they did here, but they don't usually miss it by 20 points. Something which this does remind me of, however, is 2016 Michigan Democratic primary, which obviously is in Michigan, which is the same one. This showed Bernie Sanders down by 21 points in the primary. This kind of restarted his campaign. He ended up winning by a narrow victory. The thing is, though, this was 20 points. This one's 25 points. Also, this was just kind of a special example because Bernie Sanders is not Francesca Hunk. Now, what's interesting about this is because I feel like progressives their support is underestimated. However, maybe that has flipped recently. Maybe our expectations have been tampered by Mandami doing a shocking upset. So I'm thinking maybe that's not to be trusted. So for the rest of the primaries, for the four-year primaries for the governor race in Republican GOP, I honestly can't even project anything with it now. I don't know who's going to win because I don't trust the polls anymore. Alright, polls have already been bad recently. They have gone off a cliff. And that's not the only thing we're talking about. Alright, in Minnesota, which was another state which had its primary yesterday, there was a primary for the Senate election. As you can see, it was pretty close, is what you may think if you looked at the polls. No, she won by 20 points. So that's a big polling gap also. Showed her down by 2 points on the latest poll. How about she wins by 20 points? And what's crazy is an internal poll by her showed her up by 14. And she won by more than that. So, I mean, these polls have been horrible. And the last one, which I will talk about this, I know this is kind of just a rant against the polling industry, but the polling industry deserves to be teared down to shreds after what happened yesterday. In the Republican primary, I don't know if I talked about this, but you have Mike Lindell versus the Speaker of the Minnesota House. Mike Lindell is endorsed by Trump, but the thing about him, though, if you look from a glance, he appears to be more right-wing than Lisa, but if you look at it, he supports amnesty, so I honestly even don't know what to say about him. He after this, which he lost this primary. He said that it was rigged. Well, he didn't exactly say it was rigged. He said there was quote unquote irregularities, but he lost by a bunch. So, if you can see in these polls, he's leading by several points in all the polls. He ended up losing by like 6 points. Or actually, that's the caucus. But in the actual primary, he ended up losing by around 15 points. I don't know why it's not here. I will show it on Minnesota New York Times. But the message after today is that the polls cannot be trusted. They shouldn't have been trusted before, and they certainly can't be now. So as you see here, Lindell ended up losing by 11, even though the polls showed him up by around 6 points. So, in recap, Minnesota governor race polls were shit. Wisconsin Senate races were horrible. Our Wisconsin governor race was horrible. Minnesota Senate race was horrible. Minnesota governor race was horrible. Everything about the polling industry today and the last week has been probably the worst it has ever been in its history. Thank you, and goodbye.